no matter what my age, I should always be open to growing and learning new things. And I think growth in dentistry, that's what it's all about. There's so many things that are changing from the clinical side and even the administrative side that to me, what's exciting about dentistry and growth in dentistry is actually that.
This is Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast where we ask the question, what does growth in dentistry look like to you? I'm Katie Polson, a dental hygienist and your host. Welcome to another special episode of Growth in Dentistry for our Practice Growth series. I'm Katie Polson.
And I'm Adam Smith.
And we are glad to have you here again. If this is your repeat customer, I guess I should say, for our deep dive episodes. If this is your first time, welcome. I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of what you're in for. It's going to be a great show. This is a great practice that we're highlighting today. Growth in Dentistry, really the podcast is really about just helping practices grow. It's really that's in the name. But the way that we do that, we've got some 30-minute episodes that are our Growth Series episodes. Those are awesome for just attacking problems to solve, I guess I should say. And then we also have DSO episodes, and then our deep dive episodes today, which is what we're gonna do today. And these are our top performing practices that use our software. We get behind the data and figure out how they got to that number, and they're super interesting. And if you're in the dental field at all, which I don't know why you would be listening to this podcast if you wouldn't be, then you're gonna find this super interesting. So stick around. If you are not a current customer of Dental Intelligence and you want to be one, we have a great giveaway for those that are listeners to the show. If you go to get.dentalintel.com/podcast, I'll make sure that link is in our show notes. You'll get $50 when you complete a demo. So that is all we have for as far as little housekeeping, but I'm going to introduce Debbie Jones. She's the office manager to Michael S. Jones, DDS. There is a relation, sir. That is her husband in Newport Beach, California. Welcome. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Katie and Adam.
Yeah, it's been so I've had a couple people now from ADOM that I didn't assault them, okay? But I did I did get really excited because I knew that if an office manager was at ADOM and they love Dental Intel, then more than likely they're a fantastic practice. So I got home and I looked up these practices and I was like, oh my gosh, this practice is doing so good. So I reached out to her and she's willing to come on the show. So I'm so glad that the listeners are in for a real treat. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Debbie, and also the practice in which you get to serve.
Absolutely. So, well, obviously our last names are the same, Jones. So I'm married to the dentist. We've been married for 35 years. I've been in and out of the practice throughout the years, but within the last 6 years, I became the full-time practice administrator. Let's see. I am a pediatric nurse by education and training, and about 6 or 7 years ago, we decided, it'd be a good idea for me to know how to pay bills and do payroll just in case. And about 6 weeks after I went in to start training, our financial administrator came to us and needed to go out on a medical leave of absence, and she was going to be out for at least 6 weeks. During my husband's practice, he primarily was managing the practice on his own, taking care of all the administrative duties. He had a great admin team, but he didn't have a manager. And so, as many of you know, it's really hard to manage a practice when your hands are in people's mouths and you're doing dentistry all day long. There's little time for things like OSHA and HIPAA and job descriptions and employee manuals and HR stuff and all of that. So we decided that it'd probably be a good idea for me to go ahead and stay on. I was no longer working in nursing at the time. And so I stayed on and worked on those projects and have been working in the practice full time ever since. You mentioned ADOM. So I'm kind of a nerd. I searched online because I was in the medical field, but I wasn't in dentistry. So I knew that I needed to learn about dentistry. And that's when I found ADOM. I went to my first ADOM conference where actually I met Katie this last year, but I went to my first ADOM conference that first year of being in the dental office, and truly ADOM was a godsend. And in particular, being a dental spouse, I was connected with the Dental Spouse Business Network. And so just across the board, ADOM is a great resource. So many educational opportunities, so many connections, just ways to network. And I also found my tribe. I found others who were like me, who were in the dental field, who were spouses. And so I developed friends and relationships that way. My husband, a little bit about the practice. Our practice is in Orange County, California. My husband, Mike Jones, was in the Air Force for 7 years, active duty, and then served 13 years in the reserves. He started his practice from scratch back in the 90s, which was really hard to do, especially in our area. We've got just in our parking lot, we have 4 8-story medical office, medical dental office buildings. So to start a practice from scratch was
that's a lot of competition.
It is a lot of competition. And yet he did it. And and it was all based on relationships with patients, relationships with his team. And he expects, as he does have deep relationships with his patients, he expects the team to have relationships with their own unique relationships with the patients. So anyway, he's been in practice 30 years, private practice, and he just brought on an associate last year. So that's a little bit about our practice. We have 3 hygienists, 3 days. We have double hygiene, 2 days we have triple hygiene. We have 2 extended function RDA EFs, and we have 1 RDA who floats between the front and the back. And then we have our financial administrator, and then myself and an associate who works 2 days a week.
Busy office.
Yeah, it is busy.
Yeah.
How many operatories are you doing that out of?
We have 7.
7 ops.
So about 7 years ago, he built out this new office. He was working out of maybe half the space previously. And so he has 7 rooms. It's 6 rooms, sorry, with the option to build out a 7th, but he's got 6 right now. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah. That's great. Really good. It sounds, I mean, you had mentioned when we were on the phone earlier about how in your area, if he lasted so many years, right, that
Right.
he knows that he would have made it. Was it 2 or something, or
5 years?
years.
If you can, after 5 years, if he was still going, then it was thought that, okay, he's made it, and he's gonna be successful. So
yeah,
we're very, very thankful for that.
yeah.
And then are you in network with insurances? Are you fee for service? What's the mix there?
Well, actually, that has changed in this last year. So last December, actually, Christmas Day was our last day of being in a relationship with one of the big dental insurance companies.
Nice Christmas present.
It was a really nice Christmas present. So we've had some changes in our practice. So we're no longer in network with any dental insurance companies. And we just, in the last month or 2, transitioned to completely fee for service.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
I think that's a goal of a lot of people right now.
Yeah, I think we should just start there. I know that it's kind of out of order of how we set it up, but I think we should just start there because one thing that really stuck out to me, and I could just tell that you guys actually were fee for service just by looking at your data, your AR days, which is the amount of days from when you do the treatment to when, or that was the ratio. Sorry, I always do that. Why do I do that? Anyway, your AR days were 14 and your ratio is 0.6, which is super
Really
low. Like the turnaround between when you guys do your work to when you get paid is like really great. So talk to me, I guess, a little bit about, I think one of the things that gets people nervous about, there's a couple of reasons why people get nervous about leaving their insurance company. The first one is getting new patients, right? Like if you turn off that tap, then people can't come anymore. But the other one I think is like getting people to pay, and that whole method of like collecting from patients and taking like the insurance piece out of it, and then you'll actually be able to actually collect the money that you guys actually do the work for. So talk to us a little bit about how you guys have, I guess, not only problem solved that, but got comfortable with the idea and are seeing that it's working. Hopefully that question makes sense, but.
Ooh, that's a big question. So both my husband and I are very big advocates of education, learning, researching, finding out what we don't know, and learning from other people. So we've had other consultants come into the practice. We've had advice from those who've gone before us. So let's see. So we really focused on, we've done a lot of internal things in our practice in terms of focusing on customer service and encouraging our team to read the book Raving Fans by Ken Blanchard, and giving them an incentive. Read the book, write a paragraph of how this book impacted you and how you're going to implement it in the practice, in your job, and we'll give you a monetary incentive for doing that. So there were things that we've done throughout the 6 years that I've been involved in the practice to really beef up the customer service. We are in a very, very competitive area. We're Southern California. There's another dentist on our floor. I don't even know how many dentists in our building. So the thing that really, I think, in part makes us unique is the fact that we're offering customer service. So part of that is really making sure, and it's coming from the heart. I'm not saying, we're reading this book, so we're going to implement this just to make patients happy. It really comes from my husband's heart of really caring for his patients and wanting to make sure that they're well cared for, because they do have a lot of choices out there. So part of this is kind of a long answer to your question.
You're fine. You're good. We got it. We got time. We got all sorts of time.
But part of that is coming up with what's comfortable for each person in the practice to offer the most excellent customer service to our patients. Sometimes we have to say no, or sometimes we can't completely provide exactly what the patient wants, but how can we do it in a way that is polite, that we're respecting our patients, and that we're taking good care of them. So anyway, so that's kind of the background. That's kind of the basis, having that as the basis. And then we really felt when we started to go fee for service that we really wanted to talk to our patients face to face. And so we didn't send out an email. We didn't send out a letter. When they came into the office, our financial administrator had a face-to-face conversation with them and just explained, what we would be doing going forward, and, that we would collect their payment on the date of service, and that their insurance, if they had insurance, would go ahead and send the check directly to them. If they didn't receive the check within 2 to 3 weeks, please call us back. We will follow up with your insurance. Again, re-emphasizing, we're here to serve you. This is how we're going to do it. If there's an issue with your insurance, we're going to handle it. We'll go ahead and investigate it. We'll submit the claim for you. And then, and then collecting on the date of service. So of course, some patients didn't like it because it's change. Nobody likes change. But it's better. It's better for the patients. We're not having to, send multiple statements to them, calling them, trying to get them to pay months later, collecting their, portion that's left over from what the insurance didn't pay. If they overpaid compared to what the insurance paid, we're not having to send them a check or refund their credit card, whatever. And it's good for the practice because, as everyone knows, we all pay payroll. We all pay for the, all the supplies, all the, the utilities, your rent or your mortgage or whatever it is, however you have your building space. So those are all expenses that we have. And so the closer you can get to having the payment come in at the time that you provide those services, the better it is, just as a business sense, not just in dentistry, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
So
minus the payroll on top of the payroll person or hours on top of managing the insurances and making sure you get paid from them.
Mhm.
Exactly.
I had a question on that, just a clarification. Did you go out of network with all insurances at the same time, or did you go one insurance by one insurance to phase them out?
No. So with our practice, my husband had been in network with a number of insurance companies previous to me joining the practice. When I joined the practice 6-7 years ago, he was only in network with one.
Okay.
And so we had the one to deal with.
Okay.
So he'd been phasing out for a long time. Sounds like he
yes,
had a ton and then okay.
Yeah, yes, but he had been with this last one for probably the entire time he'd been in practice. And so he was very hesitant as the dentist to break that relationship with the insurance company. But it really is just a better situation for us.
Can I ask how that's a lot of conflict and confrontation that the treatment coordinator had to have, especially doing it face to face again and again and again. How did you prepare her to have those conversations? And you may not have a great answer for that, but I'm just thinking, if I'm the treatment coordinator, I'm like, I'm gonna have to what?
Yeah.
So
she's phenomenal. So yeah, she's really truly awesome. We're really blessed to have her as part of our team. She had a little bit of dentistry experience when she came to us, but she also had a big customer service background in a very well-known department store in our area that is known for their customer service. So I think the things that she's learned previously, she's been able to translate and to implement in the practice. It is hard. It's stressful. You know what it's like just being in the office, Katie. You have patients coming and going and trying to have conversations. But she's done very well in terms of handling those conversations. Like I said, we brought in a consultant when we decided to eliminate the relationship with this last dental insurance company. And so she worked with us in terms of word choice and phrasing and those sorts of things that our financial administrator, she had in place, but they were just refined a little bit more. And then of course you figure out what works for you in the situation. You figure out how to read people, what someone's going to accept or how they're going to take it a little bit better the more and more experience you have. And so, unfortunately she's had a lot of experience, but she's doing really well, and we're just super proud of her and super, super happy that she's a part of our team.
That's great. So walk me through a little bit about how you are collecting. Like, what do you guys, do you send an email or a text or a statement, and how, like, what is your cadence? And so if someone doesn't, so I'm assuming you'd love to be paid time of service.
Yes.
Full is right. So first of all, I guess, do you let them leave without paying full time of service?
Well, we don't lock them in. We'll refuse to let them leave.
You don't lock them in the office.
Not going to unlock this door until you pay us.
No, and especially with the first time around, when they're first hearing about it, really it's, oh, Katie, no worries. Here, I'll send a statement with you. There's a number of ways you can pay. You can send a check into the office. You can go on our website and pay online, or we can send you a text message. We just recently started implementing dental intel payments. And so that's another option. But especially in that first conversation, we don't want it to be confrontational with the patient. We want them to feel it's okay. They're going to get, they're going to get their check from their insurance company. And we want that experience to go well in that first conversation. Don't worry about it. We'll accept payment, after you get home, send the check in, whatever.
Yeah.
If her husband's coming in the next week, then, send it with Joe or whatever.
Mhm.
Previously to this change, we sent out statements, and we would send, I don't even know how many statements we'd send out. It was a ridiculous amount, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And the number of statements that we would have to send out to collect, I don't know, $50, whatever it was a lot of effort. As far as our team goes, took a lot of time. You had the cost of the paper for the statement and the envelope and the postage.
Mhm.
And usually it took 3 statements to send it out and get paid for a really minor amount of money, right? So Katie, do you remember when we switched to DI payments? I think it was July, maybe.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
I think it was mid-July, and I was in shock that how much easier it was for us to be able to send a text message to a patient. They received the text message indicating with a copy of their statement. We could send a customized statement if we needed to. And then they were able to pay using that text message, and the money was deposited into our account and it was taken care of. So no more did we have to send out multiple statements. So it honestly, in a time where staff are, team members are hard to find, we were running short in our front office for a bit. And so to be able to automate something in our practice to make things easier for our admin team was a huge plus. Because the amount of time that it takes to send statements it's a lot.
Yeah.
And to follow up and to look at the AR and how long has this account been,
Yeah.
and now we're 90 days. And, so all of those things, it just simplified the practice. And I think especially, from COVID and post-COVID, and with all the changes in employees, so many people are moving around, not just in dentistry, but all over. I think to be able to have things in the practice that are automated, and be able to focus on the in-person personal touch with the patients as much as we can, then that's better for the patient, it's better for the practice. So have we had patients who aren't happy with, having to pay their bill on the day that they have their service? Sure. But I think overall, it's been a really positive thing for us, for our practice, for our team members, and for our patients. They get their service, they pay for it, and they're done with it. They don't have to think about it again.
Well, I think our job is done here.
I can say this is, I really like this topic because this is an anecdotal experience from my life, but we love our pediatric dentist. The work that's done there, the way that they treat our kids, we won't ever leave. But the only time I've ever heard my wife complain about anything about the dentist is when she's trying to pay our bill. And if I had to guess, I don't know exactly, we're probably right around 90 days past due when she finally gets around to paying it. And it's not based on financial ability to pay. It's not based on her willingness to pay, their payment process is not user friendly. They have a link on their bill. When you go to the link, it doesn't work. So she ends up trying to pay it after hours, not being able to pay it after hours, trying to remind herself to pay it the next day when she's got to call in and pay it. And it's the only thing about our pediatric dentist for our kids that I've ever heard my wife complain about. If they sent her a text message and it was a click done, they'd have it the next day.
Yeah.
But we're in probably a category that they don't want us in because it's not an easy thing for them to do. And like you said, it's also so much easier for the front office to do. It reduces the time that it takes to send out statements. But I love that you love it so much, because that's one thing that I wish that our pediatric dentist had that they don't have. So,
and that's actually one of the, I mean, James Grover, who is our chief product officer, he says all the time, your patients want to pay you. You're just making it really hard for them to pay you.
Yeah.
Which is case in point right there, right? Awesome. Yeah, that's such good. So good. Well, I think we've covered getting paid.
Yep.
What do you think?
Getting paid is definitely checked off.
They've done a lot.
14 days average AR is phenomenal.
It is so good.
So
it's so good. I congratulations on that. And even if you're a listener and you're thinking like, we'll never leave insurance, for maybe the other reason of, bringing in new patients, just knowing that like, even just reducing the amount of time that you send for statements and stuff is really helpful too. So Debbie, thank you so much for sharing that. I want to switch over to case acceptance, because that's a really big deal, especially this is going to release at the end of December, but I feel like, especially, I don't know if we're in a recession. I don't know. Are we not? We're moving into a place where possibly people are starting to get a little bit apprehensive about spending money, especially large amounts of money for larger work. And one of the things that you guys do really well in your practice is case acceptance across the entire board. So when I say that, I mean, the metrics show like a case acceptance of 84%. And then also same day treatment is 40%, which is incredibly high. And then patient diagnostics is 42%, in your treatment dollar acceptance is 47%. And what that tells us when we look at those numbers, for those of you that don't look at numbers a lot, is that the patients are accepting treatment in the chair. And then when they don't accept treatment, you catch them at the front desk. And when they don't accept treatment, then you also, so like, as you go down the funnel, like all the numbers are really high. So there's probably not very often where the patients slip through the cracks and don't end up getting the treatment done eventually. When it's diagnosed.
So what these numbers are telling me, sometimes when you look at a practice, their case acceptance numbers look really good, but then you look at their diagnostic percentages and they're only presenting
small amount,
the things that must be done, right? And so you get a diagnostic percentage in the 20s or 30s, and their acceptance looks great, but it's, you have a cavity, you need to get it filled.
Yeah, it's because you're only diagnosing the things that will get accepted.
And so a case diagnostic in the 40s with same day treatment in the 40s, almost 50s, and overall patient case acceptance in the mid 80s is phenomenal. It means when someone goes through your practice, they're being diagnosed with oftentimes probably more than just restorative. You can tell us the treatment mix, but probably some cosmetics in there, more elective treatments in there. And then they're still accepting, for the most part, at least a portion of their case. And in almost all situations, in 50% of the situations, all of their case. That's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So walk us through presenting treatment in the office and how that goes.
Well, I'm probably going to be a little bit of a contrarian, and maybe some consultants out there are going to like cringe and plug their ears when I talk. But I think it all goes back to where your heart is. I think I really have to say that many of my husband's patients have been coming to him for decades. And there's a reason they come to him. It has to do with who he is as a person. It has to do with his integrity. He's not going to diagnose something that they don't need. And they know that. It's just like me going to a mechanic and I know nothing about my car. I really want to find someone that I can trust that's going to tell me, okay, here's what your problem is with your car and here's how you need to fix it. And I think that's what he does really well. He had the great opportunity to train under Dr. Pete Dawson. And Dr. Dawson's philosophy was an acronym called WIDIUM. Would I do it on me? And so that's what my husband's taken into his own personal practice is, would I do this on me? Would I recommend this for me? Would I recommend it for my family? Because many of his patients have become almost like family to him and to us. So it really begins with creating a relationship based on trust, that your patients have the confidence that you as the dentist are diagnosing something that they really need. Now, that being said, the hygienist, our associate, use all the tools in the back. They use, intraoral photos, which are huge. Probably in the last couple of years, we've been much more than ever, just taking lots and lots of pictures. We have a couple of iTero scanners, so patients can see their 3D scan of their mouth. So all the clinical stuff is happening in the back with all the clinical team, explaining the why, what's going on, what the consequences are of not doing the treatment, and then the patient comes up to the front. I have to say our team's really good at doing handoffs. So the patient gets to hear again at the front whether that's the hygienist or the assistant is handing off the patient to our financial administrator, what they did today, what the diagnosis is, what the treatment is proposed, how much time is needed. And so it's repeated numerous times. So a lot of that is like all the things that we already know. You have a consultant come in and they're going to say, oh, do good handoffs. Yeah. So the patients are getting, so I think some of the basic things we're doing really well. And I think it's having the clinical team be able to explain what the issue is, what the diagnosis is, what the proposed treatment is, and then having the admin team be able to follow up on those things. So I don't know, does that answer your question? Are you?
Let me ask one additional thing here, Debbie, just based on these numbers. This is, like I said, this is not all, most likely not all, you need this type of work. Mm-hmm. So, mm-hmm. And I like that you brought up the intraoral photos, the scanners, those types of things that are being used in the back. If you had to guess, and you probably don't know, but how often does the patient bring up something that they're concerned about that you normally wouldn't diagnose if you were just doing a regular exam? Because you have all those things in front of them, the pictures, the scans, how often is it it's a guess, I know.
And that's a really, really hard question. I mean, he does get he does a fair amount of cosmetic work. Mm-hmm. So, he'll have a patient who just had some cosmetic work done, had some black triangles done, and she goes to her mom's group, or she goes to, whatever, and she's talking with her friends, and her friends notice, wow, look at your smile. And so her friend then calls the office and says, I don't want to come to you for my regular hygiene, but I want you to do this. Mm-hmm. And so he's had a number of those cases where he's had referrals from some of the patients that he's done work on. So he has some of that, but I mean, I have to say that, there's some of that, but I do think that, I mean, the practice, he does complete dentistry. He looks at the overall mouth. He doesn't just look at, he looks at occlusion. It's a big part of the practice. So, gosh, I couldn't even give you a percentage on that.
Okay. I'm just curious because, well, you mentioned a few things. He's doing full mouth. So he could be bringing up these things, but the reason that I ask this is what I've noticed in practice is when they start showing more of what's going on using the scanners, using the intraoral photos, is that if you're asking the right questions, the patient will say things like, oh yeah, that really bothers me. Even though it's not something that like, you'd be like, oh, does this bother you? Or like, you should get this. For a case in point, I think I brought this up on another show, actually. Both my wife and I have had Invisalign in the past 4 years, although we both had braces growing up and by most people's standards had fairly straight teeth. There were just small tweaks that both of us wanted and elected that the dentist would not have said, you should probably fix this. And those were brought up by kind of showing us our pictures of things and being like, oh yeah, that tooth kind of bugs me. Right. So, another question that we love to ask, and I'm maybe jumping ahead for Katie, is how long do you take with new patient exams and with exams in general at your office?
So new patient appointments are 2 hours. The first hour is with the assistant and the doctor. The doctor goes in, meets the patient, and then the assistant will do whatever images are necessary. We do a dental health scan using the iTero on every single new patient. And then the dentist will come back and does the comprehensive exam and all of that. And then the hygienist has the full hour, the second hour with the patient. That seems to work well for us. Occasionally we'll have a patient who says, oh, 2 hours, I don't want to come in for 2 hours, and we'll split it up. But for the most part, we do 2 hours with on the doctor's side and an hour. An hour on the doctor's side and an hour on the hygiene side.
Okay.
That's pretty typical based off of your case acceptance.
Yeah.
But what we see in other practices.
The reason that we asked that, and this, we started doing these deep dives. Now I've done probably 10 with Katie, and she's done a handful without me. And there hasn't been a single one that's been performing exceptionally high in case acceptance, in retention, in collections, that hasn't said that the lowest amount of time that the combined cleaning and exam for a new patient appointment so far has been an hour and a half, and most are 2 hours, which is interesting because there's a lot of dentists out there that are saying that's too much time. We can't do that. It's got to be in an hour. And both Katie and I have been in practices before that have done that. 1 hour new patient appointment. And it's very clear that additional time up front is needed to establish trust with the providers, to educate, to let the patients know where they are. And when that's done, everything that's affected further down the line increases. Your retention increases, their willingness to come back increases, your case acceptance increases, their willingness to pay increases. And it's really been an interesting thread for us to kind of pull at. We've never we're not intentionally going out and saying, okay, who has long new patient appointments? Let's get them on the podcast. But we've asked it every time because the first 4, they were like, oh yeah, we have 2 hours for a new patient appointment. And Katie and I looked at each other like, whoa, that's long.
Comment. Yeah.
So it just started coming out. So it's fun to hear that.
The thing that I wanted to point out, and how you said at the very beginning, the thing that you pointed to, the first part was you have your husband's integrity and the fact that your patients trust him. And that's not something that you can teach, right? But that's not to say that, I would bet, because I love this profession so much, that if you went into dentistry and you went through dental school, your goal is to help people, right? And you have probably pretty high integrity, and a lot of people can trust you. But if you don't take the necessary time it takes to get someone to see that in you, then it won't ever happen.
Right.
And then the case acceptance doesn't go up.
That's a good point. You know,
Yeah.
I think we'd find a lot of practices with much lower diagnostic and much lower case acceptance, where integrity was still very high in the dentist, just not taking the right steps to
do that.
communicate that.
Yeah. Awesome.
I like that point.
Yeah. I love that. Can you talk to a little bit about, so the patient for whatever reason chooses to leave the practice without their appointment? What does it look like? Because it's really hard to get the patient to come back in for a lot of people, to fulfill that treatment, or for whatever reason they decided to say no to it, and getting them back in. So what does the front office team do to kind of facilitate those conversations and get the patients in the chair?
For their preventative back with high
no, for the doctor, or for preventative, right? If they chose not to leave and not make another appointment, it's the same philosophy. Yeah.
Okay. So we were short hygienists, like a lot of practices. We're good now, keeping our fingers crossed and saying a prayer. But we had to put off, how do I say this? We had to put on hold recall because we didn't have any place to put our hygiene patients.
Mm-hmm.
So our numbers on our patients without hygiene appointments just kept going up and up and up. And I was nervous. Every time I look at that number, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I have no place to put them. So, you know, we had to get things right in the practice. We had to have enough hygienists to be able to see all of our patients. Once that evened out, we really started using the follow-ups with dental intel, and using local med for scheduling our recall appointments. All of our restorative is all done either in the office or by phone follow-up. But all of the hygiene appointments, so if a patient leaves and they didn't schedule their hygiene appointment, they get placed on an automatic. We have some settings in our dental intel notifications, where we'll get an alert like they're due for their hygiene appointment and they haven't scheduled. And so then we'll send them a text message and with a link to schedule online using local med, and then they can schedule that way. If after a number of times they've received text messages, I'll get on the phone and follow up with them and you know, see if they'd like to schedule their hygiene appointment. So that's how we handle hygiene. Restorative is a little bit different, but mostly it's if they haven't scheduled when they're in the office, then we'll follow up with them on the phone.
Okay. How many, like, do you have a philosophy on like how often, or like how far out do you call? Or
we tried to do that, you know, oh, okay, we'll do it, you know, 2 days, 2 weeks,
yeah.
and it never actually ended up working. So I mean, I think we do what works. You know, the doctor's schedules are full. You know, I think the patients are pretty autonomous. They know what they need to do. And a lot of times they'll call us. So it really goes back to that trust factor. Again, it's the patients trust my husband, and they know that these are the things that, you know, they want to get done. And so a lot of times they call us.
Yeah, that's really great. We've covered a lot.
Yeah, we have.
We've covered it's been fun and really, really fast. And the last thing that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about was your no-show rate. That's extremely low. Do you feel like it's low? Do you feel like a lot of people don't, you're like, no, I feel like I'm feeling homeless all the time.
I think that actually is, this is something that I learned. We don't have, the code correct
Oh,
in
there you
our,
go.
in our EagleSoft. Yeah. So
So
not,
lessons learned, people listening. Data is only good if good data in is good data good data out.
exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
we track it in our office. No, I shouldn't say we track it. We have an admin code, but it's not the same code that Dental Intel tracks. So
Okay.
that number is off. But that's something that I learned just by researching this a little bit. I was like, I don't understand. We have a lot of open time.
Good. Yeah, and especially like if you're in open dental, for those of you that are current listeners, and maybe you're wondering the same thing, and we have an article, actually, I'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah.
An article, a help article on like how to break appointments in each open dental, EagleSoft, and Dentrix, so that it'll walk you step by step, so you can actually make sure that your no-show and cancellation rates are accurate in dental intelligence. So I'll link that. I'll remember. I need to write myself a note, or that's not going to happen. Well, do you have any other questions for her before I wrap it up?
No, I probably reference, because we brought the no shows up. We did have a show probably 6 or 7 episodes ago. I'm trying to remember the MFD.
Oh,
What's his
yeah, Steve Markowitz, Dr.
Steve
Steve Markowitz. It's actually just went live this last Tuesday.
He has some ideas around reducing no-show and cancellation rates that I really liked, and I'll just highlight those here just because we brought it up and then didn't get to it. And if you don't have to go back and watch a whole new episode, but essentially, if they have not confirmed their appointment within a certain time period, they get a additional text and then a voicemail drop from the office and phone call if this doesn't work, but that says, hey, we haven't seen you confirm your appointment, just wanted to make sure you were there or you were still planning on it. Please let us know within 24 hours. Otherwise, we have a lot of patients that want to get in, and we'll give that appointment away. And he says if they haven't responded within that time frame, they double book it. If they come in, he says it's happened maybe a handful of times, then they kind of adjust and like, oh, hey, it can be scary, but you can also show them the communication of, hey, we told you, we were like, we sent you 17 text messages, right? And a voicemail
Waiting.
So but at any rate, he had the lowest no-show rate that was accurately tracked that we had seen
across 3 locations.
Yeah, across 3 different locations, and so that
if you need ideas.
But you said you felt like
Anybody else that's listening that needs ideas, that was a really good one, and he does it without charging someone, because I know that some people have a really hard time with that idea of charging someone for a no-show or cancellation.
And in some states it's not allowed. So
anyway, okay, well, that was actually a really great side note. Thank you so much. Hey, Debbie, we asked the same question to everybody at the end of the show because the growth means a lot to dental intelligence and it means something different to everyone. And so I love that you have you've been in dentistry for 30 years, but you've really been in dentistry for the last 6. Mm-hmm. So what does growth in dentistry mean to you?
That was it's kind of a tough question. But I reflected back to something my grandfather told me when I was in my 20s, that no matter what my age, I should always be open to growing and learning new things. And I think growth in dentistry, that's what it's all about. There's so many things that are changing from the clinical side and even the administrative side, that to me, what's exciting about dentistry and growth in dentistry is actually the growth, being able to learn. to implement new things in the practice and being open to different ideas, bringing things back to our team, encouraging them to do the same, encouraging them to grow and learn and be the best they can be for themselves, for our patients and for the practice. So we're really huge advocates of learning and growing. That's one of my husband's values, is always be growing.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Well, it's obvious that shows your values show through your metrics, obviously, because it's incredible. And I mean, if I'm not a big data nerd already, I really it's so fascinating to me to see all of these amazing numbers that really are just numbers. And then you talk to the people behind the numbers, and it's just such great wisdom and advice. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your guys' very busy schedule to join us for an hour here.
Your husband's lucky to have you running the front desk.
So lucky.
You're on top of it.
Yep.
Thank you.
If someone by chance is listening to the show and really connects with you and your practice, could they reach out to you?
Absolutely. My email is debbiejones, DEBBIEJONES at MikeJonesDDS.com.
Okay, perfect. I will also make sure that is in our show notes as well. Thank you so much. Again, I just appreciate it. And thank you, Adam, for joining me. And thank you to our marketing department for all their work on this podcast. I'm Katie Polson. Keep growing.